In the mid-80s, a young film student by the name of Don Mancini penned a script entitled Batteries Not Included. Mancini's script supposedly told the story of the latest must-have toy, a doll named Buddy, and a rash of murders surrounding the doll and its young owner. Once wind came of Steven Spielberg making a film with the same title, the name of Mancini's script was changed to Blood Buddy, and was eventually purchased by United Artists MGM. In Child's Play, Andy Barclay receives a Good Guy doll for his birthday, a line of toys that are akin to what Cabbage Patch dolls were in the 80s. Andy's mom, Karen, buys her son's doll from a homeless peddler who got the doll from a burned-down toy store where the notorious Lakeshore Strangler, Charles Lee Ray, was gunned down. Ray transfers his soul into the doll before he passes on, and to get himself out of the doll, he must transfer his soul into the first person he shares his secret with, which in this case is Andy. Signed to direct the film was Tom Holland, who was best known for Fright Night, a film Holland not only directed, but also wrote. Tom took to rewriting Mancini's script and didn't stop until the film was completely different. In an interview in 2011, Holland said, quote, "The original script was more of an episode of The Twilight Zone, and so the question was how to make it for a mass audience, where you could identify with it and care about the trivials of the mother and the little boy. The story was taken from the suburbs of Chicago to the inner city, which gives the film a gritty, more terrifying look." Another horror film to successfully use Chicago's urban backdrop was the Clive Barker classic CANDYMAN, released in 1992. The city's old buildings and frosty winters added a harsh look to an already terrifying situation. But the biggest change that Holland made to the script was how the soul of Charles Lee Ray would transfer into the doll.
In my original script, the doll is actually a sort of supernatural manifestation of the boy's id. So the doll is specifically going out and striking out against the people that this kid feels this unexpressed rage toward. One of the features of the dolls that didn't make it to the final film is that they have synthetic blood in them, so that if you play with the doll too roughly, the latex skin will break and then it will start to bleed, and then you have to go out and buy Band-Aids. In a rite of brotherhood, the little boy cuts his thumb and the doll's thumb and mixes their blood together, and it's after that that the doll comes to life.
It's what I always call the Frankenstein moment, what brings something to life. And Don's Frankenstein moment was the idea of the blood ritual.
Andy mixing his blood with the doll would certainly play off the title of Blood Buddy, but the name of Buddy was tossed, and so was the premise, in favor of a voodoo theme. Don Mancini has gone on record with his displeasure of the voodoo involvement, claiming that it just opens up a whole new can of worms and brings up more questions from the viewing audience.
Give me that.
And I just thought, well, that's a whole other kind of magic that's going on in this movie. So it's like, well, if he has a voodoo doll of this guy, why can't he make voodoo dolls of all the other people he wants to kill? For that matter, as a serial killer, why not make voodoo dolls of all your victims? And it's probably, I don't know, maybe an occupational hazard. Probably best not to think about it too much, but anyway, I find it kind of hilarious.
Tom Holland, along with producer David Kirshner, added the character Charles Lee Ray, aka the Lakeshore Strangler. Charles Lee Ray, or Chucky, was inspired by a combination of history's most notorious boogeymen, Charles Manson, Lee Harvey Oswald, and James Earl Ray. Although I can't find any hard evidence to back this up, I believe Chucky's partner in crime, Eddie Caputo, is inspired by Ricardo Caputo, a man who was once the #1 most wanted criminal in the U.S., as the FBI believed him to be guilty of multiple murders by strangulation, which would certainly make sense having Eddie being the accomplice to the Lakeshore Strangler. Ricardo Caputo was a fugitive until 1994, when he finally surrendered. The original plan for Chucky was to cast an actor for the opening sequence, where Charles Lee Ray is gunned down by Detective Mike Norris, and later use a woman to record Chucky's lines as the doll, based on the success that The Exorcist had with casting Mercedes McCambridge as the voice of the demon possessing Regan McNeil. For the human role of Chucky, director Tom Holland called in an actor he had just worked with the year prior on his film Fatal Beauty. Brad Dourif was an accomplished theater actor, won awards for his role in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and was teaching acting classes at Columbia University in New York City. Dourif agreed to do the film and shot his scenes, but it turned out that the aforementioned experiment with casting a woman in the role of Chucky's voice turned out awkward, and Dourif was asked to pull double duty by becoming the voice of the doll as well. According to the commentary on the 20th anniversary DVD of Child's Play, there exists a whole cut of the film with Chucky being voiced by a woman. Things turned out for the best with Dourif, but we'll touch on that a bit later. Alex Vincent was an unknown Jersey kid, looking to break into acting after seeing a neighborhood friend in a TV commercial. After passing the first round of auditions for the role of Andy, Vincent was flown to LA to compete against a few other kids for the job. Vincent recalls that what he thinks won him the role was his ability to fool casting into thinking he kept forgetting his line, when in reality, Alex was having trouble saying a now memorable line in front of his mother.
Yes, he said Aunt Maggie was a real bitch and got what she deserved.
Catherine Hicks was cast as Karen Barkley, Andy's wholesome, widowed mother. Hicks had 10 years' experience in TV and films, but Child's Play would end up being Catherine's biggest film role to that point, and arguably ever since. Chris Sarandon, another Holland film vet, having the top billing in 1985's Fright Night, was cast as Detective Mike Norris. Holland wanted a highly talented actor for the dull role of Norris, as he needed to rely on the actor to bring out characteristics that simply weren't there on the page. To study for the role, Sarandon went on ride-alongs with the Chicago Police Department and claimed it to be a pretty terrifying experience.
I must say, I was scared witless.
With the cast set and all the on-location scenes filmed in Chicago, it was time to fly back to California to shoot the interior apartment scenes. To make the doll come to life, they used a combination of static and mechanical dolls. For scenes that required more fluid movement, oversized sets were built and little person Ed Gale was cast to dress up as the killer doll. Personally, I feel like these scenes are the most chilling looks at Chucky in action. A technique was used to slow down the frames to give it a more jerky feel. The facial expressions of the animatronic, cut with the movements of Ed Gale, combined to create a believable performance from a doll. The puppetry was nothing short of amazing. Nearly a dozen different puppeteers hunched over in a 4-foot-tall space underneath the set worked together to bring Chucky to life. These scenes have been said to be ridiculously tedious and took forever to get right. Between these frustrations and creative differences, tensions were high on the set. So much so that Holland and Kirshner reportedly came to blows during the film. Despite these hostile working conditions, Child's Play was finally in the can, but the difficulties weren't over quite yet. The first cut of the film was too long and scored terribly with test audiences, even to the point of one tester shouting towards the end of the film, "Don't touch the doll! There will be a sequel!" The film was recut and retested a few more times, but was still getting low scores. Finally, Tom Holland cut the film down to 90 minutes, and the film was finally shown to a teenage audience. The film was a hit. Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert were hitting their stride as the world's most noticed film critics at the time, and Child's Play definitely wasn't safe from their criticism.
Child's Play is a good example of the sort of horror movie that I call the false alarm film, because every time there's a false alarm and then everybody relaxes, then the creature attacks.
Big
the movie is
surprise.
well made with convincing performances by Catherine Hicks and little Alex Vincent, and I guess I should also mention they did a good job on the doll. In the early scenes it looks so wholesome, you know it has something wrong with it, and in the later scenes it transforms itself into a truly frightening personality. It was an effective horror film.
It wasn't an effect. It was not for me. No, I mean, I laughed at the doll, and I also don't like to have scenes with children in terrorized situations. You remember, you said at the top of the show about how you were sick and tired of seeing priests being used as villains in a way, or their sacraments being tossed around. I hate to see kids in perilous situations. I think it's one of the easiest, cheapest thrills that you can do.
Yeah, but this is a plucky little
yeah,
kid,
yeah.
and he stands up for himself, and he is not just simply running around screaming.
He's not entirely.
He's given something to do, and he's pretty good actor.
I think that the business, if you want a picture about where a doll comes alive and is really threatening, I think a good film was, a better film was with Anthony Hopkins and Margaret, called Magic a few years ago. This film is not at that league. I just thought it was silly, and I didn't buy it at all.
Child's Play was released to above-average reviews, and Chucky was an instant icon. A sequel, however, was up in the air. Despite the financial success of Child's Play and other releases that year like Rain Man, United Artists MGM was still sinking. A Child's Play sequel would be sure to draw in money, and was greenlit by MGM. However, due to MGM having a dire financial situation, they were ready to strike a deal to sell the company and its assets to Australia-based Quintex, and producer David Kirshner was told that the sequel was off. Quintex didn't believe producing horror films would be the sort of image they'd like to carry on for MGM. It was all for naught, however, when the deal with Quintex fell through and MGM was left without the financial ability to produce any films, and so the rights to Child's Play were shopped. Interest from companies like Paramount, New Line Cinema, and even Disney and CBS fell through as well, and MGM was eventually sold to Giancarlo Peretti. Peretti reportedly hated the Child's Play franchise and wanted it gone, selling the series and many other rights away from MGM. Child's Play 2 would be independently produced, and Universal Pictures took care of the distribution. Universal soon picked up the rights to the series from Peretti and was ready to cash in, at least for the time being. Giancarlo Peretti owned MGM for about 2 years before defaulting to his bank. Child's Play being sold off turned out to be the best thing that could have happened for the series. Going into production on Child's Play 2, multiple scripts were requested from different writers. One would come from Don Mancini, the other from Mark Patrick Carducci. Carducci penned the surprising horror hit Pumpkinhead, which was released in the same year as Child's Play. Mancini was not aware that his script was even in competition with another writers, but producers went with Mancini's script anyway. For the sequel, Mancini borrowed a bit from his original Blood Buddy script, making Child's Play 2 a pseudo-remake. John Lafia was signed on to direct in place of Tom Holland. Lafia co-wrote the rewrite of the first film, and was open to having Mancini's input on the sequel. Still, Holland set the tone, and the voodoo remained. Child's Play 2 follows the events of the first film. Now Karen Barkley has had Andy taken away from her due to claims of Chucky being alive, and Andy awaits adoption in an orphanage. Meanwhile, Chucky's remains are scooped up by the PlayPal Corporation and made into a new good guy doll to show consumers that the events in the first film were just a wild tale created by the Barkleys.
I was saying that some joker here at the company must have tampered with the doll's voice cassette, you know. Hi, I'm Chucky. I'm the Lakeshore Strangler. Now I'm going to kill you. Something like... Well, something like that.
Andy is eventually adopted by Phil and Joanne Simpson, played by Garrett Graham and Jenny Agutter. Chucky comes to life when an electrical current goes through the manufacturing machine, a la Frankenstein's monster. Chucky tracks down Andy and continues his mission of transferring his soul into the boy's body. The final scene in the film takes Andy, Chucky, and Kyle to the PlayPal's factory. Yellow good guy boxes are stacked high, creating a dynamic maze of terror for Andy. The scene is almost dreamlike. Chucky finally gets time to complete the voodoo chant to transfer his soul into Andy's body, but it doesn't work. The only thing that was keeping Chucky from killing Andy is now out the window.
Do you know what you've done? It's too late! I've spent too much time in this body! I'm fucking trapped in here!
This leads to some of the most grotesque scenes involving a doll ever caught on film. Everything from Chucky ripping off his hand and inserting a blade into the stump, to little brain matter being scattered across the factory floor was filmed for this epic ending sequence. Most of the film's success depends on this final scene. Child's Play 2 offers up a striking visual style, with bright colors and blue lighting, making it resemble what a Disney horror film may look like. The plot, however, offers little twists and turns. When Child's Play 2 was released, the film was almost universally panned, but was complimented by several critics, including Siskel and Ebert, for its visuals, mainly looking to the final scene in the toy factory.
And I had a long talk with myself after I saw our next movie, which is named Child's Play 2. And I found myself having an argument between my head and my heart. My head told me that this movie did indeed deliver the goods, that it was a truly frightening thriller and it was a well-made film. But my heart told me the movie was sick and unwholesome, a completely malignant exercise. The closing sequence of Child's Play 2 inside a toy factory is truly horrifying. It's good filmmaking, but it made me feel unclean and disturbed as I was watching it, and I can only imagine what effect it might have on small children. As a film critic, I have to say this movie is well made and effective, but as a human being, I wish I hadn't seen it. What good can come of having such foul and ugly images pumped into your mind?
I think that my heart and mind may be closer connected than yours. I don't make too much of a distinction. I thought that I was laughing at the film because it was so preposterous when they have that little doll attacking with a knife. At the same time, it's sickening. And so I didn't think that the filmmaking was pretty good. The only thing I'll grant you is that the final fight in the toy factory is well staged,
yes,
because you have all the boxes and that's
and the
pretty
assembly
engaging.
line and all the other stuff.
Okay,
yes.
that part. But that's the end of the picture. All of the other setup involving the doll is really silly. And again, I must stress how violently abusive the doll is, and how sickening the role that an actual child had to play opposite.
Even then, you're contradicting yourself, because if it's silly, then it wouldn't be violently abusive. It's more than silly, Gene.
Oh, no.
It's really sick.
I have a knee-jerk response to showing children in jeopardy, and it is cheap, it is rarely justified, and in this piece of trash, it's not justified.
Well, my
at
only
all.
point would be that the movie is even worse because it's so well made. You have to grant it's well made, and that's
only in the last sequence.
While Child's Play 2 didn't reach the monetary success of the first film, it still made money. The film took in over $10 million in its opening weekend. A third film was immediately greenlit by Universal, and they wanted it done soon. Although filmed the year before, Child's Play 2 was released in November of 1990. Even before the release of Child's Play 2, Don Mancini claims that he was writing Child's Play 3, and shooting for the third film began only a few months after the release of Child's Play 2. Sure enough, Child's Play 3 was released in August of 1991, some 9 months after Child's Play 2. Universal also tried this with Back to the Future Parts 2 and 3 a year prior, and while that series was working on a much larger scale, both financially and in the promotional department, there was still a drop-off in both earnings and interest. Don Mancini points to this as a possible reason that the Child's Play series declined as well. Not only was Child's Play 3 a disappointment at the box office, it's also regarded as the worst in the original trilogy by many fans.
That's it, England. Get my limo. I'm out of here.
Child's Play 3 was written once again by Don Mancini and directed by Jack Bender. According to his resume, Bender had only worked on TV up to that point and hasn't done much theatrical filming since. Jack is much better known for directing several episodes of the TV shows Lost and the recent Stephen King story Under the Dome. Mancini was admittedly running out of ideas at this point, but soldiered on with a story that took place 8 years after the events of Child's Play 2. A teenage Andy meant saying goodbye to Alex Vincent and saying hello to Justin Whalen, a child actor with recurring roles on TV shows like Charles in Charge and Blossom. In Child's Play 3, Play Pals, having obviously not learned their lesson in the last film, clean up the abandoned factory that played host to the incredible final scene in Child's Play 2. As one of the cranes picks up the remains of Chucky, the doll drips blood into a vat of liquid plastic, and from that vat, they decide to make a new good guy doll. A PlayPal exec argues that this is a bad idea, but the PlayPal's head honcho, Sullivan, claims that everyone has forgotten about Andy Barkley and gives the good guys another chance. Sullivan is given the first good guy doll off the line as a celebratory gift, and after killing Sullivan, Chucky is off to find Andy to swap bodies. Mancini was given little time to think of a good way to bring Chucky back from the dead, and the intro feels rushed. Chucky finds out that Andy is headed off to Kent Academy, a military school, after going from foster home to foster home due to bad behavior. Chucky ships himself to the academy, but is intercepted by Tyler, the young son of a fighter pilot. Realizing that he's got a new lease on life, Chucky tells his secret to Tyler so that he can begin transferring his soul into his new friend. This is where Andy takes a proactive role against Chucky to save Tyler from the situation he's all too familiar with. A scene in which Chucky replaces the paint ammo in the rifles marked for the War Games competition with real bullets shows more of Chucky's tactical side. But the real strong point of the film is, yet again, the ending sequence. The final act of the film takes part in a colorful and playful setting, a county fair. The lights and laughter increase the emotional contrast of the serious matter at hand. The final sequence consists of Tyler being chased through a haunted house ride by Chucky. Chucky nearly completes the soul transfer, but his plans are foiled once again by Andy. Chucky puts up quite a fight, having half his face sliced off before falling into a giant fan, where he's chopped up into a million pieces. Dead as dead can be. One of the biggest letdowns for fans of the Child's Play series is that there's never been an official video game based on Chucky, at least not one that has been released. What makes this situation bittersweet is that there very well could have been one as early as 1989. In the early 80s, Nintendo was trying to get their brand out in America, producing the Donkey Kong game for home consoles. MCA, parent company of Universal, was not pleased with the title and premise of Donkey Kong, as they felt it infringed upon their King Kong property. A giant legal battle played out, with Nintendo coming out on top. Universal was forced to pay the then small Nintendo $1.6 million for legal fees. Not staggered by this, MCA Universal purchased a toy and video game company of their own to cash in on many of their properties. That company was called LJN. LJN is notorious for releasing a barrage of terrible cash-in games, and Universal was willing to feed properties like Back to the Future, Friday the 13th, and Jaws into production. So why didn't we get a quick Child's Play cash-in? There are a couple theories. Firstly, MCA Universal sold LJN around the same time Universal acquired the rights to Child's Play, so at that point, it would be a matter of selling the game to a developer-publisher, and at that time, having only the original Child's Play movie to go off of, the idea of making a game from that concept probably scared a lot of people. Child's Play wasn't the most parent-friendly thing in the world, and selling it to kids, well, that might have been a hard sell. Although the thought of an 8-bit Chucky running around my screen delights me to no end, the fact is that nobody could get it done. But what about now? Surely parents have backed off a bit, and Chucky's now widely accepted in America's horror lexicon. Unfortunately, the curse of the Chucky video game lives on. In 2011, it was announced that Tick Games, makers of games you've probably never heard of before, were working on a game entitled Chucky. Wanna play? A game where the player would be controlling Chucky himself. From the trailer, it would seem that players would walk around an apartment complex, murdering unsuspecting victims in gory fashion. Tick Games hit a wall in funding and went to crowdfunding website Kickstarter to ask for monetary support. The push to raise $925,000 began on October 15, 2012, and was canceled just 1 week later, having only raised a measly $585. The game was officially canned. It's hard to say that the failure of Chucky, Wanna Play, was due to a lack of interest, but rather the quality of game Tick Games had shown off to that point. Now don't get me wrong, I appreciate that Tick Games was trying to get a Chucky game out into the wild. However, the game was beyond ugly and looked worse than a PS2 launch title. It just wasn't meant to be. During the production of this retrospective, a mobile game entitled Chucky Slash and Dash was released. The game is a clone of the popular Temple Run game. In Chucky Slash and Dash, you play as either Chucky or Tiffany, collecting batteries and slashing victims as you navigate hazardous obstacles in a good guy warehouse. The game currently has a positive rating on the Apple Store, but the desire for a PC and/or console Chucky game continues on. It had been several years since Child's Play 3, and the franchise needed some new ideas. For that, Don Mancini looked towards the old Universal monster flicks of the 1930s. Bride of Chucky would be the next picture in the Child's Play series, relating in several ways to Bride of Frankenstein. Not only was Chucky getting a leading lady, but he was also a torn up, restitched freak, just like Frankenstein's monster. Mancini wrote the role of Chucky's love interest with Jennifer Tilly in mind, and even dipped into his own funds alongside David Kirshner to make sure that Tilly was a part of the production. Also cast was funny man John Ritter and little known at the time Katherine Heigl. Ronnie Yu, who would later go on to direct Freddy vs. Jason, was set to direct. Now, with 2 Oscar nominees in the bag, Bride of Chucky had the star power to push for big box office earnings. The budget was set to $25 million, making Bride of Chucky the most ambitious in the series yet. Bride of Chucky was not only ambitious for its budget, but the film also tested the waters with Chucky's more comedic side. After the events of Child's Play 3, Tiffany, Chucky's girlfriend back in Chicago, is given the doll's remains by a cop who steals them out of an evidence locker. The evidence scene shows the belongings of all the horror icons from other films. There's Jason's hockey mask, Leatherface's chainsaw, Michael Myers' mask, Freddy's glove. The scene was not only a wink to horror fans, but it was also pulled from the original script that Mancini had written for Child's Play 2. Tiffany puts Chucky back together and resurrects him using a Voodoo for Dummies instruction book. However, for Chucky to transfer his soul into the human body, he must recover the amulet he wore the night he was shot and killed by Detective Mike Norris. Chucky and Tiffany's reunion is short-lived when Chucky tells Tiffany that the ring he gave her before he died was not a promise ring, but instead loot from an old woman he had murdered. Tiffany locks Chucky up in a playpen, but it's not long before Chucky breaks free and electrocutes Tiffany in the bathtub, transferring her soul into a doll. This bonds the two so that now they both need to get the amulet. Chucky and Tiffany trick a young couple into taking them, as dolls, to Chucky's final resting place in Hackensack, New Jersey. The rest of the film plays out like a buddy road trip comedy, mixed with the most gory kills in the series to that point. Bride of Chucky was promoted heavily, even getting a segment on the most popular cable TV show at that time, World Championship Wrestling's Monday Nitro on TNT. Reviews were slightly better than Child's Play 3, but one thing is for certain: Bride of Chucky breathed new life into the series that many had written off. The new edition of Tiffany was well accepted overall, and the film made over double its budget gross worldwide. However, Bride of Chucky would end with a cliffhanger that would send the series completely off the rails. Despite all this grandeur, it would be another 6 years before we saw Chucky on the big screen again. Unfortunately, for most fans, it wouldn't be worth the wait. Don Mancini not only once again wrote the script for Seed of Chucky, but he also put on the director's cap. With the budget set for around $12 million, most of the film was to be shot in Romania, with the post-production in London to receive kickbacks. This explains the heavy influence of British accents in the film, and the script had to be rewritten to place Chucky's son, Glenn, in the UK. Billy Boyd, most known for his role as Pippin in Lord of the Rings, joined Jennifer Tilly and Brad Dourif as the voice of Glenn. Seed of Chucky continued the idea of the Universal Monsters lineage. Seed was handed off to Rogue Pictures, then a subsidiary of a subsidiary under the Universal Pictures umbrella. The film shows the journey of the living doll and circus attraction Glenn, who sets off for California to find his parents. Tiffany and Chucky have become props in Hollywood. Glenn finds his parents and brings them back to life with the amulet that was featured in Bride of Chucky. Glenn spends the film torn between his parents and his gender, leading him to go insane. Glenn ends up choosing his mom after Chucky kills Tiffany with an axe to the head, fueling Glenn to dismember his old man. The film was a financial success, but was hated among critics and fans alike. Seed of Chucky plays more like a lampooning of Hollywood and jumps the shark with its expansion of the Child's Play series. It's considered the lowest mark in the franchise. There was, however, a highlight of the film. Don Mancini's camera work was impressive, and the film looked clean. Working with the lowest budget in the franchise to that point, Mancini was able to give the film style. If the plot can't be enjoyed in Seed of Chucky, the look of the film certainly can. There are several memorable shots, even if the script and acting left something to be desired. This was all encouraging, knowing that if there were to be another entry in the series, Mancini was up to the task of directing it. If only Mancini would write a script that channeled the true horror of his original idea, a script that would send it back to its roots, a script that would strike fear into the hearts of a new generation. Child's Play is a movie. Chucky is fiction. But what about the idea of a doll coming to life? How much truth is there to this scenario? There are people on Yahoo Answers swearing that their child's toy is alive, and it's impossible to tell the difference between who actually believes in what they're posting and who's just doing it for the laughs. You've got your parents, like myself, who have had experiences with toys turning on their own. I throw those toys out, not worth the heart attack. And then there are cases like Robert the doll. Robert has been featured on several paranormal television shows and is a tourist attraction in its home in Key West, Florida. The story of Robert dates back to the early 1900s, when a mistreated servant girl gifted a voodoo-cursed doll to her master's son. The boy could be heard talking to the doll, much like Karen Barkley overhearing Andy. The boy blamed all that went wrong in the house on the doll, and many of his family members began to believe him. When the boy grew up, he found himself face to face with the doll again when he inherited his parents' house. Robert was kept in the attic, but was reportedly found many times in a rocking chair located in a room in the house, mocking passers-by. In the 1970s, when another family purchased the house, Robert was claimed by another child, this time a girl. The girl, now an adult, claimed that Robert tormented her and aimed to kill her. Due to these claims, the girl's parents donated the doll to the East Martello Museum, where Robert sits today behind a glass case. It's said that if you snap a photo of Robert without first asking his permission, you will be met with bad luck, ranging from car troubles on your way home to death. Letters surround Robert at the museum, mostly asking for forgiveness. And there are several other tales of dolls being haunted, possessed, or even walking, talking, or moving around. But the Child's Play series has faced some real-world controversy as well. The two biggest cases coming out of the UK. The kidnapping, torture, and murder of Suzanne Capper took place in December of 1992. Suzanne suffered many gruesome torturing sessions from her captors, but one instance of torture got the media's attention most. Headphones were placed on Suzanne's ears, and the song "Hi, I'm Chucky" by 150 volts was blasted at maximum volume. Suzanne's captors would then begin each torture session with "Chucky's coming to play." Another case, and the most well-known, is the murder of James Bulger.
Police on Merseyside say that 2-year-old James Bulger, who disappeared from a shopping precinct at the weekend, was horribly murdered and then dumped on a railway line.
Bulger, who was 2 years of age, was abducted, tortured, and murdered by two young boys on February 12, 1993. The crime was one of the most gruesome in history, given the ages of all involved. Child's Play popped up again when it was found that one of the murderer's parents had rented Child's Play 3 in the months prior to the crime, The theory that the film had anything to do with the murders was quickly dismissed. During the commentary on the Child's Play 20th Anniversary DVD, Don Mancini and David Kirshner referenced plans for an upcoming remake several times. The two even directly discussed the bombshell during the end credits. This announcement came during a rash of remakes that were being released and announced. It seemed like every 80s horror franchise was getting a reboot, and it seemed like Child's Play was no different. But then, a year went by, and then another, and then another, all with no signs of this supposed remake. With the rumors popping up on message boards that the next installment in the Child's Play series was in development, questions swirled as to when we'd actually see evidence of the project. On June 23, 2012, news broke that Chucky 6 was indeed on its way, that it was called Curse of Chucky, and would be a straight-to-home video release. The news stirred up emotions of Chucky fans everywhere. Many fans were sure that the straight-to-home video treatment meant another disappointing entry in the series ahead. Fans felt like this was demeaning to the series, and put it in a bad light. Curse of Chucky was to be directed and written by the man who started it all, Don Mancini. Mancini promised to bring the franchise back to its horror roots. A tall task to tackle, but Don was set on making the best he could out of something not many were expecting to get much out of. Curse of Chucky's budget, estimated at around $5 million, was to be the lowest in the franchise to date. Brad Dourif was set to reprise his role as Chucky, and cast in the female lead was his own daughter, Fiona Dourif. Curse of Chucky made its screen debut at the Fantasia Film Festival in Montreal, Canada, and won the Gold Award for Best International Feature. The early buzz was good for our friend till the end. Curse of Chucky was released digitally on September 24th and on Blu-ray and DVD on October 8th. Curse of Chucky is set against the backdrop of a family brought together by the death of a motherly figure. Chucky arrives in a similar fashion as he did in Child's Play 3, and as the movie unfolds, we find out why he's chosen this seemingly random family, how he got there, who's helping him get to the places he needs to get to. The movie connects the dots in such a satisfying way. It's the ultimate fan service film. I really don't want to give away too much since the film is still fairly new, but suffice it to say, all fans of the series must see Curse of Chucky. While video-on-demand numbers aren't really available like DVD and Blu-ray sales are, it's thought that Curse of Chucky at least made its money back. In just the first week, the DVD and Blu-ray sales in the US did over $1.8 million gross. Add in the sales to date, plus the video-on-demand and foreign sales, and Curse of Chucky did alright for itself. The film is also a critical success, currently holding an 80% freshness rating from 15 reviews on the critics site RottenTomatoes.com. Better yet, the majority of Chucky fans were pleased. Now, with the series back on track, what does the future hold? Where do we go next? Will the series return to a theatrical release? Will it continue to lead the way of a new forum for successful video-on-demand films? Will Don Mancini continue the series towards a darker, more serious setting? Shortly after the release of Curse of Chucky, Mancini took to Twitter to announce that a 7th film will be released. As of the publication of this film, there has been no word on the next film, other than Don Mancini's writing the script. Whichever way the series goes next, for me and for many other fans, Chucky will always be our friend till the end.